you ready? On the normal budget here, we've got one escalator for a tire lease that's on there every year. That's basically the only change. The rest of it was, I think we moved within the budget, if I'm not mistaken. Other than mandated increases. Does anyone have any questions on that? Before we get down to that, I want some updates and new requests. On the updates, here we'll wait till Eric comes back in, because I know some of this is long, or ongoing part of funding. On this, on the paper that I gave you, it's just a basic summary of grants and stuff that we've been able to obtain since 2019. I'll list all those on there and just continue this list because of the grants. And just because it was in 2019 doesn't mean it's actually even completed. A lot of those grants have a lot of compliance that go along with them, and we're continually still working on some of those projects. The next page just gives a typical overview of what our agency typically does. And then year in review, I always put this page in there with just some photographs of stuff that's happened within the last year. That's all events within Hawkins County that were pretty large events. The bottom one is an out-of-county event, but just showing kind of the dangers of the job that we deal with in some of these storm responses.
That wasn't one of your groups.
It was not a neighboring county, but he was out in same kind of conditions that we are, wind, and it brought in a tree on top of his vehicle. Fortunately, it was about 3 feet far enough back that he walked away from it. The picture of the water going across the roadway, that was during that recent storm. There's actually about a 4-foot boulder in there that was actually stopped at because of that. Just true flash flood conditions. Okay, we'll go into new requests and updates. The first one I've got on my list here is the good news. The ARPA funding that was allocated for the fire departments, that was initially $1.5 million. We went through that resolution, and that resolution addressed turnout gear, hazmat gear. I think there was an amendment that addressed the hazmat gear and air packs. Total, after all that was purchased, there's $230,682.16 left approximately. I know there's been some talk of maybe using that for the fire department radio project. The total project for that is $522,775 estimate on it. So I wanted to provide that update here and see if anyone had any questions on it.
You did the radios for 522?
The 522,775 takes us into the next tier of the radio system that has not already been funded. The frequency aspect has been funded. Those still haven't been completely secured, but we have an avenue that we think we can move forward with that.
So some of the scuttlebutt I hear, they're not going to be compatible in X time, is that?
Correct. Are you saying the new radios in general?
Yes.
I think that's with any device you buy, just like cell phones and everything else. these radios are a mini computer running all the time, and we found that out by, to give an example, you can leave a radio on one of the old cars and it could be on for a week and not run the battery dead. Things if it's on for a couple of days, it's just sitting there continually processing data. So I see this county in 10 years on the state radio system for law enforcement and EMS. I've got that part of the update that I gave you as well. The governor's put about $180 million into radio sites. We're going to capitalize on about $4 million of that money. 2 sites in this county, 2 sites in our neighboring county of Hancock, which will greatly help us on that north side of the mountain. They're also footing the bill for one of those radios for every ambulance in the county. What would be perfect is if we could wait for that to come for law enforcement and EMS and then use what we have now for fire. But unfortunately, it's going to be 5 to 7 years probably before that infrastructure's in place. So I don't know if we're willing to wait that long to fix that problem. Another problem with going, as soon as we go to digital, the volunteer firemen, a lot of them rely on scanners and stuff like that. That's going to become an issue. I'm completely fine with leaving it like it is now, but there's also coverage issues as well. There's pros and cons both ways. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. But I do see through these state programs that law enforcement for sure will be over on tacking within 10 years. They're starting that build out in Middle Tennessee, going to west and then coming to east is the plan to build out. And they've hired several people and then got several contracts in Motorola to get that done.
So we're not gonna have to buy towers?
They will be providing 2 of them. We're taking all that work as far as my office is going out meeting with the engineers, kind of recommending sites. The thing is they're building that system for the state. So where they may say those 2 sites need to go may not necessarily be where we would necessarily need them.
Will we still have to pay the subscription?
That's all been erased in the governor's budget as well. There's been a lot of change in that budget the last 2 or 3 years for that state radio system. I've had a meeting scheduled with the director of TAC and to meet with engineers to go over those sites with them, and that's still not happening just because of the workload on their side. Does that answer? I know there was a lot of info there, but does that kind of answer that? I don't think.
I just want to know if the radios are gonna work, because they're concerned.
Yeah, there's, I don't think there's a product out there that we could buy that never has to be updated. It's kind of the scenario we're in now, because some of their stuff's 30 years old. A lot of it honestly is installed as much as it is equipment. Those trucks take a beating going in and out of their bays with their antenna systems and stuff, just because a lot of their bays are just inches from the top of their truck. So obviously going in and out several times a week, that takes a beating on the antenna systems.
Are you referring to, Nancy, are you asking if
The new radios.
if we purchase radios for the fire department, if they'll be compatible, or the radios we've already purchased?
The ones that we're supposed to be getting for the fire department, they're the ones that's got concerned that they're not gonna be compatible.
The way we've done the system in law enforcement and EMS is we've bought the equipment and retained it. That way, if we do go to TAC at some point, it's our equipment to move. Also helped us out with some insurance stuff, and we have had some, not insurance, warranty. But we have had some warranty claims that basically I pulled that back into my office, gave them another radio, and was able to get it repaired for free. So.
Is that what you're looking at doing with the fire departments as well, where you would manage, excuse me, you would be the manager of those?
So there's a the way the system works, we have to have control of the devices all the time. There's a computer back there that runs 24/7 that's constantly monitoring the system. Every device that's on the system is uploaded into that. If there's an update that goes out, that pushes it out. So if we're running the system, we have to pretty much have control of the devices anyway. So I think it is best to keep ownership of them just because we have to have that to keep them updated as well. If an extra channel needs to be added, if there's an adjustment needs to be made in the radio, it all pushes out through that system over the air. And if we go to the state radio system at some point, it will do the same thing, but it'll be over Wi-Fi versus over the air, because they won't let you use that much data in the state system.
Is that when are you asking us to fund fire department radios?
I am not, I'm just giving you an update on where that funding stands as far as budget. Second thing I've got here is a full-time position for EMA. Currently, we have one full-time, one part-time, and what I consider two reserve staff. My reserve staff, they like for example, Caleb's worked one event this year, but it was a hotel evacuation, so I greatly appreciated the help on that high-risk call there. So that's kind of how we're staffed at the moment. Just like every other department that's moving in front of you, labor shortage has played into that. Plus, by the time I get somebody trained up, it takes about a year to kind of get used to how our systems work, what we do, that kind of stuff. A better opportunity comes along. Or there's a family scenario where childcare gets too expensive, something like that. So that's kind of what we see happen. We're running one of the smallest staffs in the region. Just to kind of give an example, every emergency management agency works different, but Carter County has 2 EMA people inside the office and one additional person to make a third person that just covers their radio system. And they're pretty close comparable, I think, with some of the stuff Eric looks at on her size.
Very close population comparison.
We've had an increased workload, like I say, taking on this radio systems has been a lot. If we hire somebody, they need to have a basic understanding of radio systems and IT technology and how that works, because that's kind of what we deal with all the time. Also, we've got quite a bit of industrial development going on in the county that's been reported multiple times. As that increases our workload and our risk in the community that needs to be addressed. Every 4 years, we have a surge of work inside my office. That's a basic emergency operation plan renewal. That's this year. So that kind of plays into this too. To kind of show where the state's identifying this increase in risk. In schools and critical infrastructure, the state's placed a special agent assigned to Homeland Security in every single county in the state. And that's just because of the increased risk that they're seeing with vital infrastructure and school safety and those type programs. Our agent assigned to that is Chris Pinkston. We've obviously always had a good working relationship with Chris, and that continues in this new position. There is another slight benefit I listed it on here. If we hire another person, it streamlines some of our EMPG paperwork that Eric has to deal with. Right now, Evelyn compiles that information. We use my salary and then different points of the budget that we deem as allowable expenditures. And then we let them audit that, decide if it is or is not. The way neighboring counties do that, they just use the salaries, they streamline that. It's a copy basically every month, the same thing. So that's what I've got on that. Does anybody got any questions on that?
With another full-time employee, how would that translate in opportunities for further exploring grant opportunities? Basically, I hate using the term generating revenue for a grant because it's not truly revenue, but in that sense of you're making the investment in the labor personnel. How would that free up an ability to continue furthering this?
Well, I'll just give you an example. This time every year there's a conference in Indianapolis, FDIC, that's going on right now. I went last year. There's multiple grant opportunities that I feel like we could have pursued that I would like to. I know that all this other projects are going on. We're already maxed out. We'll revisit this in 2 to 3 years. Obviously, when you put those, that may have been an opportunity you might have been able to capitalize on. That may have been something you may have put 40 hours of work into and not got anything. That's just the nature of grants. I feel like we're passing up opportunity right now, but we're in a scenario like after 9/11, about 2005 is when 2005, 2006 is when I seen this surge after 9/11, and we're into that now. Felt like some of that was going to dry up to some extent, but I'm not seeing that on the state side. I don't know if Eric can echo on other grants or not. It seems to still be flowing pretty decent right now.
Grants everywhere.
Yeah.
That's almost by not having the personnel to pursue those grants, you're almost leaving money on the table.
Correct. $45,000 comes back from the state this is a yearly form that we have to fill out the back of my document here. I just stuck this on here. We get $45,000 for this stack of papers. So that's a pretty good reimbursement for doing basically one document and some other compliance type stuff. There's talks every year of increasing that. Me and the mayor met with the deputy director of TEMA about 6 months ago. He obviously voiced that they would love to increase that, and that may come along at some point. Would be a way to reimburse a second position potentially, but there's no guarantee that could happen. That's just something that's been discussed, but like I said, it's been discussed for years as well, so.
Do we have any approximate costs on what the funding would look like for that second position? I know it varies with insurance, benefit packages, and a lot of stuff, but it's just approximate.
I don't, because I don't know where Mr. Miller would like to present that employee to hire anyone on the scale. So that'd be the biggest determining factor, whether he wants to be, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever they would land.
So this is my opinion on that. I think my position is 11, if I'm not mistaken. That person would be taking on the same responsibility as me, other than the directorship of the agency and the lead of the agency. In my absence, that person, by TCA code, the mayor is in charge of my absence, but obviously that's a person you would train up to the capacity that I'm in as well. I would recommend a pay scale right below mine for the next one down, at the most as far as a 10 or 11 is where I would recommend. Also, like I say, there's risk that comes along with this job. Our workers' comp premium is higher than anybody else's in the county, and all we have here configured on the theory behind that is if there is that disaster, that we're always responding to it. But as far as our workers' comp, it's more expensive than any other agency in the county. And that's the only thing we can come up with that doesn't apply. But yeah, I do feel like we're leaving great money that we can pursue. Also, another thing that we do daily, just by being here, is every public safety agency that comes before you is going to say they're short-staffed today, and they are. Part of my job description says to report the condition of public safety to these committees. Everyone's struggling. So during the daytime, a lot of times we'll go out on a call that's not necessarily an emergency management call, but to help direct traffic or just provide manpower, or if they're lifting on a car accident, if they're loading patients or whatever. Sometimes there's an automobile accident and you'll have one paramedic unit and four or five patients, and we help out with that as well. So that's another degree of protection that we offer to the community just by being here and going out when we hear those high-risk calls.
Would you be moving one of your part-time employees to full-time, or would you be adding a full-time employee on top of the part-time you already have?
So we brought this up in public safety, and what we ran into last year, this year's been completely different. This year I've had less staff in the office than we've had since 2007 when I started a part-time position. And that's been because we've not been able to keep someone in there. For 3 months between two public safety meetings, I intentionally didn't fill that position because I didn't know if we were going to try to hire somebody mid-year or not. So I was trying to keep enough money held back just for that. It's an odd finding if we work anyone over a allotted salary. So, for example, if we have 30,000 in part-time and we use 31,000, that's a potential audit finding. We ran into that scenario last year. So, obviously, part-time's an easy way for us to have extra people when those influx of calls come to the hotel evacuation. I talked about some of that stuff. So we could cut it some, but I would recommend cut it very much because we got a scenario like the Sunwell situation or something that lasts for months as far as recovery. We could get into a scenario like we did last year where part-time people would be cut off just because of the amount of budgeted time we get. Steve, if that happened mid-year, it's not too much of a problem because you get a budget amendment, but that one, like the summer wells event happened during June, it's really hard to pull a budget amendment off in enough time to get that covered.
Okay.
This question here said second full-time.
And not get part-time.
Director Miller, mentioned there the EMS, fire and so forth. When you go out and help them, do you go at their request?
We gauge that on the type of call and.
So, no, we don't.
I have, I'll give you an example. I was in Churchill several months ago, and Chris Vaughn was the only responding fire member to a fire that was over on Highway 94 in Preston Zone near the Double Road. I responded from near Churchill home, got my department vehicle, radioed Chris, said, "Do you need me to respond to help you with manpower?" He said, "Absolutely," and responded to that scene. So I was probably the third or fourth responder that got there 45 minutes into the event. So part of the time, yes. Other times it depends on just if we think it's a high-risk call that we go out. Our calls compared to what we responded to 5 years ago is pretty minimal. It's some weeks it's 1 or 2, some weeks it may be 5 or 6. It just depends on what exactly is going on. And a lot of it's our location. I mean, there could be maybe a larger event in Mount Carmel that it'll be over by the time we get there. That if you're in Rogersville, we may stop by and say, "Hey, you need any help?" But all public safety, in my opinion, is a one-team approach to get the job done.
If we filled another full-time position, are you gonna need another vehicle? Go ask us for another truck?
I've got this down here, and this is another recommendation for public safety, and that is yes. So our vehicle scenario, we've had 4 vehicles since I've been involved in the agency, typically, other than the time we were down that blue truck that we just replaced, which we were down from it for like 2 years. Obviously, if we have a person, they're going to have to have a dependable vehicle, or if we have part-time, they're going to have a dependable vehicle. Our vehicle is our mobile office. Our vehicle houses our supplies that we help the citizens of this community with. My recommendation is, this was done before I took this position. We have a 34-foot mobile command trailer that basically takes a flatbed semi-truck to pull it. It's a flatbed 550 style vehicle that is very expensive to maintain. My number 3 item on here was, I feel like we need to downsize that so we don't have the need for that vehicle anymore. That vehicle is in your brochure here. It's that white flatbed. And I have some grant money that we cut with that. That grant money is around $10,000 that we can move toward a vehicle. I would recommend keeping this vehicle this time just because it's backup. It's already upfitted. It's got a new transmission in it because we've had to put one in, but just keeping for a backup is the next page is that expedition. If you guys say we don't want to do that, let's go down to 3 vehicles and pay mileage. I don't care if you go that route either. The only time we would have to pay mileage is when, obviously, we have a primary vehicle down and we don't have a vehicle to send people in. But if that would be the wish of the commission, that's what we do. With taking the equipment out of these other units and reusing it. As far as that command post, the bottom picture is the picture of the command post. The top one's ours, the bottom one is Greene County's. Sullivan County's just bought one of these as well. The average is about $19,500 for that. I think we could build one for less than that. Obviously, we'll do it as economically as possible if we decide to go this route. As far as the vehicle right now, vehicle prices are trending down on state bids slightly. It's because of compared to when we bought the one that we just bought. The reason for that being is, I think, interest rates. But a new one, we're probably looking at $55,000 of additional funding, and a used one with about 50,000 miles, probably just outside of the warranty, probably looking at about $35,000 plus that grant funding. As far as taking that vehicle from buying it to being roadworthy, ready for response. Basically, we had the ARP update, the full-time position. And I'll get this list to Eric with figures for the next meeting or however he wants to do it. If we replace that command post, it would be a max of 19.5. Hopefully it'll be much more economical than that with taking the stuff out of our old one. And then the replacement of the flatbed truck if we did a used vehicle or a new vehicle. The only other two things that I've listed on my paper are just things I want you to have in mind that we brought up a lot in public safety. Our utility provider, Holston Electric, for the majority of the county, has come to us and said, always be prepared for 72 hours of outage, just in general, just as a precaution for everybody, especially with the situation with power grid, stuff like that nationally. There's some of that addressed in here, just with that extra person, of having an extra person to deal with some of that workload during some of those rolling outages, if that ever happens again. But the majority of that has not been addressed in any of these needs. The largest vulnerability I feel like we have to shut down emergency services in a short amount of time is our fuel situation. All our fuel's on cards. That's not addressed in here. I'm working on that outside of here with Matt Hickson with the school system to try to get our own fuel supply again. Just because we know those two things are large things that are out there working. I just don't want to sneak up on us in future budget hearings. So I just want to bring that up so everyone was aware of those two items. Does anyone have any questions on any of this presentation or the last two items that I just discussed, just for general info?
What's the bottom line?
As far as money, so we discussed the pay scale 9 or 10 as far as the full-time position, 19.5 if we replace the command post. If we do use vehicle just outside of warranty, it's about $35,000, and then adding my grant money with it. If we do new, about $55,000, and add my grant money with it.
I'll also try to have you a request sheet by the time we reconvene for second draft purposes, so that you can have all that in front of you.
I mean, that sounds
All
like
that.
approximately $120,000 to $150,000 increase. Is that about right?
Yeah, bit close. Yeah. Plus, Eric has to do all the benefits and stuff, so we'll have more concrete figures, obviously, for the next meeting.
There's always, just like we discussed with my request, just like we discussed with Nancy's request, there's always an outlier of insurance. You never know if they're going to need it or not, and what kind of plan they would need, so there's always a variable there.
As far as cost, for the last two that I discussed, like that fuel depot, if Matt were to identify a funding source for that, that may be when we come to a budget meeting immediately and say, hey, we found this, but there's a 20% match or 50% match. If he's able to identify a grant, Matt's trying to identify grants that would be able to help us out with that fuel depot.
Is the one out there at the gas, at the bus shop, is it just obsolete or required?
It was completely decommissioned because of the tanks, was my understanding. And that's when everyone in the county went to fuel cards. We have got a scenario that was there one situation in the Gulf when there was a surge at the pumps a couple of years back where we were trying to source a tanker just for cruisers because we were starting to get a situation where we weren't able to source fuel by card. And we were reaching out to take them. The problem is when that happens, everybody needs a tanker. So
So, how about with natural gas, and that's some of the school buses are going to.
I think they have their own, if I'm not
They got
mistaken,
one
they have their own
church.
fuel supply for that. So Matt would be the one to ask for that for sure. But as far as our emergency vehicles in the county, they're all either gasoline or diesel fuel.
I'm pretty sure the natural gas buses refuel at the gas tank, right?
No, Churchill,
Okay.
they've got a station up there.
And
Because the gas company's got trucks that fueled up there, so they're
Yeah.
allowing the buses to fuel.
And they're already doing that.
Yeah.
And we're looking at building another one.
me and Director Hickson have also just briefly talked about this, that may become a scenario where there's only one depot and maybe other buses and outlying areas where we may use cars and vehicles in other parts of the county. Still, maybe a combination of our fuel and a card source as well. I just didn't want that to catch anyone by surprise if we were able to identify a grant source for that.
For those of you that just came in, we are a little bit early. We thought we'd try to get a jump on it, so we took care of it.
Anyone got any questions? I appreciate appreciate your time. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for saving the world.
I don't know about that. We have to take care of it for another day. Maybe.